Okay, welcome everyone, and just to follow up on what Ian said, really would welcome feedback on the way through. I've got probably far too much here for the time. Well, we'll see how it goes. I'd like to leave at least 15 minutes or so, 15, 20 minutes for questions at the end. But if you've got questions on the way through, please don't stop to suggest, do as Ian suggested, put your hand up and happily talk. A bit more volume, yes, I can try my volume. How's that now? Is that better? Julie? Is that better now? I've moved my volume up. Oh, good, okay. So, where was I? Yes, so if you put your hand up, we can stop. If you got a question that can keep, you can always type it in the chat window, I guess, and we can take it from, when we get to the end and look at it then. So I want to, first of all, set the scene a little bit with some stuff you're probably all familiar with before we really get into this, and some background support for the whole argument of authentic learning and obviously what it is. And so you might have seen this slide before. I can't remember what presentation I was at when this showed, but if anything, this should start to show the sense in which the world is seriously changing when the largest taxi company owns no taxis, when the largest accommodation provider owns no real estate, and so on. By the way, the largest IT vendor is no longer Apple. It's the parent of Google as of yesterday, apparently. But regardless, I quite like this quote I saw somewhere. It's not the owner of a stagecoach who builds the railways. So this here slide came out of the Australian Computer Society, got a research firm Deloitte to do some research, and an excellent report on that. I can send you the link to that later if you're interested. We just launched it here in Brisbane last week, and I thought this graph really did help show some of the power of what's going on. So if we look at some of the current digital disruptors that we've got from mobile, analytics, cloud, social web and content, but we look at what's coming in terms of incredible increase in the use of artificial intelligence, the successful use of the connected home that's been a promise for like 40 years, but we're starting to see it come to fruition. 3D printing, obviously, cryptocurrency. Some argue that Bitcoin, but despite its current issues, may one day totally replace our normal currency. The use of NFC, near-field communication, and so on for mobile payments. Wearables, particularly in support of health initiatives. Genomics is a huge growing area. Of course, the Internet of Things is hugely growing and will probably one day be replaced by the Internet of People in 25 years for some even scarier stuff, robotics, drones. Drones being used in areas you wouldn't expect, like for agriculture and mining in ways you wouldn't expect there. And of course, electric and autonomous vehicles is a huge one, and of course VR. So the changes coming are greater than the changes that have been already, and so I think we're long overdue to look at how we might better educate our students for this changing world. And I think, although I've been doing this essentially for a long time, I think it's long overdue that schools look more seriously at trying to integrate full authentic learning into their curriculum. So I'm going to run through a few things. It's just an outline of what I hope to get through, but let's make a start. So it can get a bit tricky. The word authentic, meaning just of undisputed origin and not a copy, is not really what this means. Like, this is not undisputed origin learning or genuine learning, except in the sense, I guess, that it's real life learning. So a style of learning that encourages students to create a tangible, useful product to be shared with the world, and I'll emphasize the sharing and how significant that is as we go through. Or another, just a fancy new term for real-world project-based learning, which some of us may have been doing for a long time, and I'll give you some of my background on that. So I was reading some research just recently saying that, to do this we require a paradigm shift from disconnected ideas and activities to real-world evidence, and that this is really something that works for students. By the way, if I go through some of these slides too quick, because there's a lot on them, don't worry about it. You'll get a copy of the presentation and you can read through them in detail. I just wanted to pick out some of the major points as we go through. So researchers have cautioned that for too long we've emphasised skills that are relatively easy to obtain rather than the skills of analysis and creativity. And we see this huge push within UACARA, particularly digital technologies and design technologies curriculums, and elsewhere the 21st century skills arguing for this. So how do we do this better? And I would argue that authentic learning does that, and I obviously need to define what that means more fully, but authentic learning gives much better career preparedness than more traditional forms of learning. And just as a bit of background to this, universities of course have been doing this for a lot longer, and you'll see different terms. It helps to recognise some of the terms like work integrated learning is another term for real world project-based learning, or now shortened to authentic learning. And you'll see in that in Perth, so Cindy might be familiar with this, I think Edith Cowan I'm pretty sure is Perth, meet project deadlines, create appropriate solutions to industry problems, implement those solutions, and obviously evaluate and reflect on both the solution and their work performance. Or another one where this is again Edith Cowan, they do some coastal engineering where they conduct a site investigation and do a structure, again it's a real project, and importantly you'll notice a final report is reviewed by industry analysts. And I just remembered, if I've got this correctly, there's a little hand that it'd be better if I was using on here somewhere, I think here just to point at, so just to highlight what I'm doing here. So another one, the Australian Catholic University, actually, and this is one that could be developed more, looks at the moral and ethical issues involved in authentic learning. It's actually an area I would say I haven't really touched on a lot, so that's something for further follow-up later. And some recent research I just read about where someone did, so someone's got a question to ask, is that what that beat was?
Yeah. Paul, did you say you wanted to use the pointer?
Yeah, am I not using it correctly?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Is that okay?
Yep.
Yeah, I just brought it up. So I hadn't been using it correctly. I will try and use it in future. So some research I just read about that was to look, for example, if at authentic learning experiences, if that improved female students' participation or perceptions of STEM and their confidence. And the person that did this research said that it certainly improved everyone's attitude toward learning regardless of subject, and had an overwhelmingly strong impact on student confidence and identity. So it definitely did help the female students, but it actually helped everyone, and that's definitely been my experience. Part of what led me to give this talk, and I did a presentation to our junior high school teachers earlier in the year, so this is really a follow-up on that, a little bit extra, was reading about the new Chief Academic Officer for the International Baccalaureate and some of the work that he was doing in authentic learning. Was very interesting. And I quite liked a couple of quotes from here. Start looking for problems to solve, actions to take, beauty to create, and start seeking out authentic, high-stakes audiences for student work. And I'll try and remember to come back and give you some examples of what we might mean, or experiences that I've had in terms of that high stakes. I'm going to skip this because this embedded video doesn't apparently work well, but it's not that important. People will sometimes confuse project-based learning with authentic learning, and while it's a step in the right direction, I don't equate the two, because if it doesn't have an audience outside the classroom, if there's not a client or an audience outside, I don't think it is truly real world or authentic, even though the students may enjoy the project. So some fancy terms here. I put this in because I was going to refer, and I might come back to this later if we've got time, to look at some of the big changes that are coming and how this will impact. But just to make one point for now, this is an interesting quote, came out of a book published late last year. You'll be paid in the future on how well you can work with robots. So we might look at how does authentic learning help that. So first of all, just a little bit of my background in this. I set up a course which I called the School Achievement Program in Digital Technologies back around 1994. I used that term digital technologies. It's now become popular, so I'll take some credit for that term, because that was a long time ago. It was, after a couple of years, awarded a federal best practice. I basically ran a business within a school. So I had students in year 11 and 12. I went out, tendered for real jobs, and we got paid for those jobs, and the student did those jobs. And time permitting, I'll see how we go. I'll bring up some of those on the way through. So that was things like creating the first ever websites for companies, even getting one of those websites to be rated #1 in the world, creating resort kiosks for a resort, doing a magazine, a newsletter that went out all across Australia, New Zealand, and PNG, and so on. So our students were doing real work in teams for real clients, where I'd gone out and tended for those businesses and so on. So since then, I've done a lot of other things particularly in Queensland. We have a couple of courses: the Information Technology and Society course, and Information Technology Systems course, and our Information Processing and Technology course, where I can actually still do this sort of thing in those courses. So just very quickly, I had it on the next slide, sorry. So in terms of that school achievement one first, I mentioned a couple of these things. We did some cartoons. That was an interesting experience for a local cartoonist. We did some information systems. One was for a library, the first digital system that library ever had. We did 12,000 run every quarter of a 10 to 12 page national quarterly newsletter. So just in terms of the high skills, or the high stakes there, just to mention in passing, it was quite scary sometimes when the client for that would come in, and the students had done an awesome job, and this thing would have been worth an A to most people marking it, most teachers at least, and he would just throw it back at them and say it's not good enough because there's some grammatical error or some topological error, the layout was not quite right. So they learned pretty quickly that being good enough for an A wasn't good enough for the real world. It had to meet all the I's had to be dotted and the T's crossed. So that was a very valuable experience with all of these tasks that we did. And it was a fascinating experience too for the students to choose what we actually did with the money that we earned afterwards. We obviously had some legal implications there. It took a while to get that set up. It came about when my students had won a statewide competition to build a business app some 2 or 3 years earlier. It first gave me the idea for this, and we eventually got it off the ground, and we got some federal funding for that. So in terms of the result, here's just an example. I won't really go into a lot of detail, but just show you some ideas. I had a student last year do a locker app for a year level coordinator, going around checking the lockers for her year level. We've got 300 students per cohort, so there's a lot of lockers, and wanting to know if they're unlocked or not. And so the teacher could take her mobile phone, enter the locker number, hit the button, and then hit that it was unlocked, and it would automatically, as soon as she put in unlocked, it would send an email to the student and to her for her reference, keep it onto her database to say that student had unlocked it, and if the student left it unlocked for 3 times or whatever, they might get a detention. But it was a simple, excuse me, but very clever app that was real world. So the client was a teacher, but still very much outside of the classroom. We did an app for a swimming carnival where we had about 23 people managing this very frenetic teachers carnival, swimming carnival between 9 houses. A very, very frenetic thing, about 24, 23 people I think I counted, including the person operating the computer entering the results. By using this app, we get that down to 3 people, and we can display the results instantly. So that was a very clever app where you had one person calling out the results and another entering the data into basically an animated app. So it wasn't the best design, but these were the options. So these were the house things here. So the student would click on whichever, as the numbers came in, which lane won, would click on that lane, and then you would see an animated graphic here where the lanes would come down, and if the order was all right, you would just submit it down here. If it was wrong, you'd adjust it and fix it up and submit it. So that was all running on an Android tablet, so that's another example. We did talking books, so the clients in this case were grade 4 students, I think, and their stories, and so my year 11 students created talking books for those students. Took their stories, did the graphics, did the audio, but and maybe fixed a bit of the grammar up in the stories, but created a talking book. So in that case, the student was also the client rather, was someone in the school. Outside of the school, we have many students, and many of you have probably done this, create websites for clients. While there's no expectation they get paid, a lot of our students do actually get paid because they end up being used by the company, and they help them with the submitting and creating the URL and so on. So, and of course tutorials are quite common, advertising kiosks so this was an advertising kiosk done to market a person who's a graphic designer, actually done by a team that included her younger sister in that team, which was quite interesting, very, very well done. So they're just some examples. Some examples I'm currently working on with some students. I've got students doing a tutorial for drama, for the drama teacher, stage placement tutorial for a music teacher, a lot of maths ones. So often the easiest real world, if you like, is teachers within the school, but it's still an external audience to the classroom, and that's the crucial thing. So in some of those earlier ones, they were external to the school, but as long as it's external to their class, I think it has the same impact. So another one that's currently being worked on, interactive tutorial. So what are some of the key characteristics then? The point about these activities is that they have real-world relevance. So it's not just the decontextualized information in the classroom, and obviously, as I've got down here, it's a lot messier though, you know, and in some ways ill-defined and problematic. It's not as ill-defined, and I'll show you some of our task sheets, time permitting, not perhaps as ill-defined as you might think, but in some ways very much open to multiple interpretations, and to students be able to identify their own tasks and subtasks and how they might go about the task. Complex, definitely taking a length of time. So it is a challenge for the students to get started. I find even with year 11 students who've maybe had a bit of practice at this with me in year 10 still very much struggle to get, a lot of them at least, to get underway, to meet with the client and to appreciate, you know, what they've got to do to get the task started. It's an opportunity to obviously investigate, and this is a crucial factor. I think we really fail often in normal classroom, is being able to tell the relevant from the irrelevant. Often a maths problem is given where all of the data given is relevant, but in real life you're given plenty of data that is totally irrelevant or is somewhat irrelevant, and you need to learn that skill of matching, being able to see the patterns and see from the patterns involved, from the information involved, what's relevant and what's not relevant. So that's something that I believe real problem solving or authentic learning offers. Authentic tasks obviously offer a great opportunity to collaborate. Now, there are times when we'll give these projects to individual students and they can still do a great job, but most of the time we will involve them in collaboration in a team of 2 or 3. We've found over the years that 3 is the maximum and 2 is probably more ideal, but it depends on the size of the project, and I'll show an example where it might be significantly larger. But we find with peer review, the ability for people to work together, the larger it gets, the more there tends to be someone bludging within that. And in time permitting, I'll come back to what I mean by complex communication. Obviously, a team project is complex in the communication involved, but I might be able to give you some more specifics on that from some examples later. Authentic tasks provide the opportunity to obviously reflect, and most courses will have some sort of design, develop, evaluate cycle, perhaps, particularly if it's an IT course. And so clearly that's involved in any real world project. You've got to design it, you've got to develop it, and you've got to evaluate it. So that's a very important part of it. And the evaluation should be both evaluation of the learners, of how they worked in a team, and also obviously of their end product that they've created and the whole process they went through. If you are, just to come back for that a second, if you're familiar in Queensland with the Information Technology Systems syllabus, that uses a special, to Queensland at least, thing called CIPP, which stands for Context, Process, Context Inputs, Process and Procedures, Processes and Products, sorry, which is a cut-down version of how to do this evaluation. And I can show you details on that. It's an interesting approach. Obviously, there's a lot of design thinking in this. I think that's pretty obvious. The tasks, and this is to me one of the real strengths and one that there are big hurdles to overcome, but that I'd really like to see this done better and taken further, is this interdisciplinary cross-curricular approach, as is perhaps common in primary school, but certainly not common for me with year 11 and 12 students, is getting out of our domain-specific silos and getting involved in cross-curriculum. I'll show you an example of that as we go through. Obviously, the assessment is integrated with the task. So we use a 5-phase project management approach. So we have 5 phases to our projects, and so we can mark each of those 5 phases as they work through it. So we're actually marking it on the fly rather than having a test at the end or anything like that. And I can show you some criteria sheets of how that works. So that certainly makes the assessment a lot less artificial, even though in some ways it is. The greatest assessment is the student's relationship with the client and the quality of the product and the feedback they get from their team members and so on. But in terms of having to have some marks, it's still a better approach. So they can create polished products that are valuable in their own right rather than a preparation for something else. And they're not always successful though. We have plenty of failures, plenty of times where they have a client and the client's not happy with the product and it's not used. But even then, I think the clients learned a lot from it and the students have definitely learned a lot from it. So while we hope to have created polished products, it's not crucial as an outcome. It's just great if it happens. They allow for completing solutions and diversity of outcomes. So we can have more than one group work on the same project. We try to share them out, so we might only have a couple of groups working on a single project, particularly as we're asking clients to give up a bit of their time, and we require, the way we structure at least for a couple of our subjects, at least 3 meetings with the client. So if they've got too many teams to talk to, it's fairly onerous on the client. So often just one client per group, or maybe two groups working with the one client, but certainly prefer not to have too many. Some of the skills developed, obviously, and again, time permitting, we'll come back to some of these. Recognising patterns in unfamiliar contexts, flexibility across disciplines, developing patience through some of the complex problems they have to deal with. And one of the things that I've found is technology makes this, while I do it, most of my projects are technology related, I believe technology would help this in any sphere, as I'll show with an example, because you can develop simulations, you can do low fidelity prototypes that aren't technology based but ultimately leading to a technology solution. You can have web-based performance support systems and forums to help you evaluate as you go through, and obviously you can develop apps. So all of these things here help make it more accessible and achievable. So I'd say technology has advanced significantly just in the last 4 or 5 years to make authentic learning more achievable for more subject areas or across more subjects and more domains, more subject domains, and more year levels as well, sorry. So some other research I found a while ago, someone did some real world projects for social justice and talked about the positive impact and the incredible quality of the work and how much it empowered the students, and that there was real critical thinking involved, and other things. But they're just some of the feedback that they got. I'll skip that slide except to say any typical design methodology would just work so well with an authentic learning project. So here's an example that I posed. It's one that I haven't actually done, but I wanted to find one for junior high, because most of the work I do is with year 11 and 12 and some with year 10. So I was looking, what would I offer or propose as an example of this that's a cross-curricular for, say, junior high, as we call it here. That's year 7 through to 10 somewhere. So I thought, what about a commercially viable board game? And that's going low-tech, but for high-tech reasons. So some of my reasonings for that are that we see so many people so engaged with their mobile phones, we want a way to force them to put the phones down. So as a social media, so you could do research on the issues of social media, the issues of disengagement with each other, and poor communication, because people are just on their phones all the time. They are communicating, but in a different way. So a board game forces them out of their comfort zone into it. So some of the stuff in preparing a design brief and trying to do a project, there are still plenty of things the teacher needs to do if they're going to help the students. So you might want to go through, and again, don't need to note this down in any detail, because I can supply you with the whole task sheet I made up for this. But you might like to think of some of the questions. So the students would do a fair bit of research at the start, and there's just some questions. You can see, you can come up with quite a few questions that would be relative to it, including marketing questions, who would you have in your team. And so this is here you can see with something like this that you could potentially, in a project like this, have quite a few people in the team. What we tend to do is have students take on several roles. You obviously need a project manager appointed, but if you look, you've got here this is just off the top of my head, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, at least 9 roles. So you could do a team of 9, and you could even, I guess, have 2 people in each role. So you could do this with a lot more people. I wouldn't recommend it. I would think it much better to perhaps have people carrying out 2 roles within that. So that's some of the roles. Now there's a lot of research, project management involved. So under design, you've got to research it, work out the roles, do ideation, brainstorming, do further research, then design your objects, your narrative, your layout, your playing mechanisms. You might do some of that in a program like Scratch. So you do an IT solution first as a preparation, as a sort of a low fidelity prototype for your final product, which is going to be non-IT based, hopefully. You might do a pitch, and I'll come back to that, including a Kickstarter video they can actually put up on the Kickstarter site for starting projects. You might develop a basic version to test first, present to the team, present to your angels. That term is used for venture capitalists for small projects. So in the real world, and we've actually done this, you might have people, taking it serious enough to be prepared to fund it. So you actually have real angels, that is, in a sense, real venture capitalists. So that might be the teacher as well. But one of the important things here is that whoever's evaluated should not be just their teacher. It's really important to get outsiders, whether it's their parents or game experts or other people involved in it. You might do some initial marketing, create a website for it, obviously reflect on the roles involved, the social interaction, the learning in the game demo you've done, the viability of the game, those sorts of things. So the pitch to angels are a lot of things you might get them to do, such as, how would people play it, what supporting evidence you've got, why this game could be successful as a potential market success. You might do artistic representations or 3D printing. You might do 3D sketches and so on. Look at your target audience. So lots of stuff you would present to your venture capitalists, to your angels. So I've got more stuff there. I won't go through all of that. And of course, the beauty of something like this task is look at how cross-curricular it can be. You've got money involved in any sort of game, like the picture I had up at the start there of Tokyo, King of Tokyo, I think it's called. So how quick are these going back? Just forgotten the name there. I've played that game. Where is it there? King of Tokyo. King of Tokyo. A great board game. Came out 2 or 3 years ago. My oldest son is a product architect. He's a world-leading programmer, and he loves board games. So when I visit him, I got to play that game, which gave me this idea. So there's some simple maths involved there. Obviously, there's plenty of art involved. There's English involved in the creative writing of the adverts, radio adverts, the manual for it. There's English involved in doing the presentations, the research, and so on. Drama and role-playing, the advertising video. Obviously, a lot of technology involved in 3D print, the game objects and stuff like that. And all the way through it, there's computational thinking, which I'll define in a minute. So you can see there that there's a lot of possibility for cross-curricular. There was a great TED Talk, if you've never watched it, from 2009, pretty dated now, where Dan Pink points out the 3 most effective motivators to everybody are autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So authentic learning gives students autonomy. They're able to chart their own course through the project and what they want to achieve and how they're going to do it. It enables them to become, to some degree, a master at what they're doing, and it obviously gives them a purpose outside of themselves to create this product. Although the real challenge for us is we're not really marketing the product, we're marketing student learning that takes place in creating that product. But obviously there's a lot of challenges. Your school timetable may not suit this, which is a challenge we have, trying to get all those different subjects together at the same time. We've got a typically very silo nature of our curriculum, so particularly at the senior level and even at junior high, trying to break that down. It's very challenging for a lot of people. If it's a new thing, people balk at it, and we're all very, very busy as teachers, so finding the time is a challenge. learning to cope with what might seem failure but really is only apparent, because it's always a success to have tried at something like this, applying the new assessment techniques, and just being prepared to take on the challenge and be brave is the challenge. So there's lots of things stopping people doing it, but there's plenty of reasons why we might do it. Some alternative approaches to this as well. We have a teacher here, Chris Chapman, teaches so I attended one of his class sessions on the first machine age, on the industrial age. It was just stunning how clever he made that as real as possible by having a campfire in the middle of the classroom and bringing along homemade bread and all sorts of stuff. It was quite amazing. And some schools run market square days when they want to show what was it like in the industrial age and what did their market square look like. So that's a different style of authentic learning, but still very much authentic learning. If you can get parents along to that market day, you can get outside people along. And obviously the world has changed so much that IT offers solutions to existing problems. So you only have to look around your school, around your community, and you'll find there are so many problems that have potential for being solved by IT. So the number of problems out there is absolutely huge. So we never have too much problem. We tend to send out emails to our community and say, you know, who would like some work done, and we normally get plenty of replies. I'll just take another 10 minutes or so to just look at how computational thinking fits into this. Now, there are many definitions of computational thinking. This is one. Computational thinking is an approach to solving problems, building systems, and understanding human behavior that draws on the power and limits of computing. But that sounds a little bit waffly and a little bit more detail here. But I might just try out this technique here to put onto this whiteboard. An example I only saw today, which I thought in some ways was a better definition. I saw it in a blog post today. I'll just see if I can get this to come up. Just chuck it in here. So here was what I thought was a really good definition of computational thinking. So it's got a bit about its background, but here, it's this part here. Just let me turn this hand back on. It allows students to tackle problems, to break them down into solvable chunks, and to devise algorithms to solve them. Therefore, computational thinking concentrates on students performing a thought process, not on the production of artifacts or evidence. Ultimately, computational thinking is a process and therefore should not be evaluated as an end product. So I felt that wasn't a bad definition of computational thinking, but just to jump back to my page I had up, I see this as a relevant also way of understanding it. You formulate a problem, you logically analyze, design the data, you represent the data in some abstraction. Computer science is the science of abstraction. You then automate it through some sort of algorithmic thinking. You identify, analyze, and implement solutions, and then you generalize it or transfer it perhaps to other solutions. So that's another way of looking at it. Also, this is how I break it down into 4 steps. So if I'm applying the computational 4-step process to authentic learning, look for the real-world issues. So you need to ask questions about the world around you and find a solution. It might be like the problem the teacher had with the lockers being left unlocked. So that was a possible problem, and then posing how might we use IT to solve that problem. Then from that real-world problem, modeling that idea and coming up using design thinking and algorithmic thinking to come up with potential solutions. At this stage, perhaps doing some low fidelity prototyping, which is something our University of Queensland highly recommends our students do low fidelity prototyping. Then obviously some programming. If it's an IT solution, it will involve some programming and coding to get a solution, and then taking that solution, verifying it by testing it, evaluating it, refining it, and putting it back into the real world. So through all of these processes, you're dealing with a person outside the classroom and getting the question. You're then showing them the design, so there's feedback on your design. You're not necessarily showing the coding, but the teacher might be involved here, but you're obviously getting them to evaluate your solution. So for at least 3 of those 4 steps, it's very much got client involvement or end user involvement. A couple of practical examples. There was an app that's now been bought out by Google. I can't remember it. It's just an amazing app come out about 3 or 4 years ago, Well, you hold your phone up with this app running, and it looks at some other translation of a sign and translates it into the language that you want it translated into, which I could see not a lot of people might want to use, but if you're travelling down a road in some country as a tourist and there's a sign telling you that there's a bridge is washed away, you'd want to be able to read it. So that's one example. An even more amazing one is Skyo. Before I could potentially show a video on that, can I just get a feel who has actually heard of Skyo? So could I perhaps have a show of hands if anyone's heard of Skyo from our audience? If you want to just tick on the hand button to see if someone's heard of Skyo before. Because if you haven't, I will quickly show you a little bit of a video on Skyo to show you this amazing approach and its potential, as I explained, once you've seen it for use. So there's no hands coming up, so see if this works. And look, sorry, I copied the wrong thing in there. Sorry, I'll try that again. So I'm just grabbing, it's a YouTube video. I'm just going to try placing it in here again under under the web thing. I'll try that again, see if it works this time. Okay, so please let me know if you can't see this. Okay, so I'm just going back to here. So the Skyo, that was this picture here, that is being released. There's been some hold-ups, quite amazing. I can remember first going to university and seeing a whole floor of a chemistry department having a mass spectrometer fill that whole floor up. And now you've got a mass spectrometer the size of a USB, which is quite incredible. If anyone here watches those NCIS shows, you'll know what they use mass spectrometers for, all their fancy analysis, give you some idea. But this takes it back to I really look forward to going to go to the shop and know that my avocado I'm buying and paying $3 for, I can eat that night, not have to wait or find that it's already unripe, because it's a very expensive thing, those avocados, and I love them. So that's one thing. My oldest son is developing an app for it. He's going to develop an app where apparently if you leave the baby's bottle out for more than a couple of hours out of the fridge, you shouldn't give it to the baby, so you can tell when it's basically started to deteriorate, because it will look at the chemical composition of that product, in this case the baby's formula, and it will be able to tell if it's actually started to change and shouldn't be fit to eat. Or if you put it in the fridge and you want to know a day later if it's still okay. If you put that chicken in from the night before and you want to know 2 or 3 days later, is it still edible, you don't want to get food poisoning, this thing will tell you that. So I see students be able to create apps for that. It's so new that that's something that our students will be able to create apps for, which is really quite an incredible thing. Moving on, just a couple more examples very quickly. The students in Torres Strait Island did a Raspberry Pi app to help with emergency beacons in their community. So that was an awesome example a year or two ago. Some students in America in, I think, year 8 or year 7, around about that age, looking at the students, did an app to help with dyslexia. Now, they came up with the idea. They didn't actually code it, but they, at least at America, they went to the point of doing the design brief for it, and then it won an award, so a team of professional coders put it into practice. I'll skip through some of these slides now because I really want to give you a few minutes to ask questions. But very briefly, I see the power of the mobile adding so much more to this opportunity, because people haven't perhaps appreciated what a mobile phone can do. If you just look at some of the devices that are in your mobile phone in terms of sensors, we've got all these sensors. They're not in every single mobile phone, but you can get a mobile phone with all those sensors in, and this one that we're just seeing, the Skya one, is infrared spectroscopy. So that's not in most at the moment, but that is coming. So there's so many opportunities to be solved. If you look, for example, at just some of the options that you use a GPS for, it's quite staggering how many different ideas people have come up to use a GPS, and I'm sure it's not exhausted. So our students are capable of being innovative thinking and coming up with these ideas and testing them, or improving upon existing ones. Well, if you look at the jobs that are coming, jobs we've never heard of before, such as a data scientist, or a drone operator, those jobs are coming about and inevitably coming our way. And are we preparing our students for them? I think authentic learning gives us that opportunity to really prepare them much better to be able to take on these new sorts of jobs, such as Amazon's already hiring drone operators, apparently. So I think authentic learning really helps with that. I saw a blog post recently argued that all students leaving high school should have these 10 basic digital skills. Obviously, authentic learning helps particularly in building a good portfolio of work that the students have worked on, a bit like an art portfolio, and it obviously helps them in being better at doing presentations to the angels and to the community, to the people that they've created the website, the product for, whatever it might be. I will pause now. I've got some information on the second machine age that I find really relevant to this, but before, if I just skip that, because I really wanted to see if it's time for feedback, I'll just quickly go to the end of that and just sum up because I could certainly come back and spend more time on that. One of the things that this book argues for is we need to teach ideation, the ability, good thinking skills, creativity, critical thinking, large frame pattern recognition, the ability to see those complex problems and be able to see the patterns in them to find ways to solve them. And complex forms of communication are critical cognitive areas for the future. And I believe that authentic learning gives us an opportunity for that. I'll come back to that if we get time. So just to jump on then as a summary of the key characteristics of this type of learning. It's centered on authentic tasks that are often of interest to the learners, because you can ask them to find the client, and I'll offer them options. So I often find about half my students will find their own client. They're engaged in exploration and inquiry. It's often interdisciplinary, or it can be. It's obviously closely connected with the world outside the walls of the classroom. There's a lot of higher order thinking involved in this sort of task. Students, and I really stress this, my experience is students should share their findings with their community. It makes a huge difference if they can share what they're doing with an audience outside the classroom. Not to mock or knock us teachers, but it suddenly gives a different perspective on the whole thing. Very much design thinking being argued these days is important. It's very much a part of it. It's more student-driven than most approaches, because the students are making a lot of decisions on the way through themselves, and so on. So, I just might show you, before I go to questions, I mentioned I've got an example of the task sheet, just to see some of the tasks that you might get a better feel, at least, of how that goes. So I'll just see if this is going to work. So this is a task sheet that I did for the board game. So, Ian, can you tell me if this is visible to everyone, please? It looks like it should be.
Yep, clear as a bell.
Okay. So here's a task sheet I made up. Now, this is one I haven't actually used, so it was just a demo to show my teachers here at our school the potential of this, because it's one that I haven't done. But I've used my standard layout. So I'm saying a team of 4. You know, I've got a bit of background in it. I then this is using my 5-phase project management that we use. So I've talked about creating a pitch document, some of the things that might be in there. So I've given the students some of those questions in detail that I would expect them. I've told them about who they should appoint, the roles they should appoint to it. I've asked them to do a Gantt chart. If you don't know what that is, it's a project management chart. You can do it in a spreadsheet, but it's much better to use something like Microsoft Project, which is the professional tool for that. I teach them how to use the professional tool to do proper project management. They then go ahead and do the design, so there might be, you know, narrative, and there might be storyboards, mock-up, context sketches, and all sorts of stuff involved in that. So I don't expect with something like this they'd have time to do necessarily everything or all the levels, but at least some of it, at least enough to demonstrate it. And then at the end of this design phase, I'd expect them to show this to their client. So they would have had an initial meeting. If it was for a client they were doing this, the very start they'd have had a meeting with the client. In this case, if you were acting as a teacher, as the domain expert, or you're getting preferably someone to come in to be your domain expert, that person would have talked about it with them. Then after they've done the design, they would show their designs to that person or to those angels. It's very important to get that feedback at this phase before they go ahead and try to create it. And with something as complex as that, maybe just do some of the main functionality and maybe the first level or 2. And then once they've done, they might organise a presentation to that client and include as part of that a Kickstarter video is an excellent idea. So looking at the proposal in terms of weeks, you might envisage something like this would take considerable time. You can see here I'm estimating about 6.5 weeks, so it's quite a long-term project when it's just one class's time. If it was done across several classes, several different subjects, you might shorten that considerably. Forget about the CEEs. So this is the sort of task sheet that I'll make up for it, where I'm assigning just a grade to all those different expectations, be they the stuff for the define phase, the plan phase, the design phase, the product is part of the implementation phase, and then I'm marking the product, the close phase. So in the close, I'll look at marks for the evaluation of it and so on. So that's just a typical example to show you of what you might consider in that sort of area. So if you wanted me to, I could go back and discuss the second me CNH, but I've been going for a while there, so I might just leave it there. And are there any questions?
Paul, did you answer the question? I'm multitasking here with about 3 sessions at once, so I don't know whether you answered Cindy's question.
Sorry, no, I didn't. Sorry, I missed the question.
It was about 10 minutes ago now, so you were showing some app. Cindy, do you want to come on the microphone and just talk to us what you're after there?
I can see a question, is it available for iPhone and Android for free? Was that the Skyo? Was Cindy asking about the Skyos? I presume so. The Skyo costs money. There's no way in the world that's going to be a free app, because it's a device, a mass spectrometer that would normally cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, fitted down to the size of a USB, so that's definitely not free. Their projected initial cost is about $250, I think, but as it becomes mainstream, and I expect it will become ubiquitous within a few years, we'll see the price drop just like the price of USBs drop, to one day it might only cost $10 or $20, but initially it's not going to be cheap. Okay, I have got a question. Are you given time at school to set these projects up? No, yes and no. It's what we do as part of our teaching, so it's part of our preparation. So that's definitely a good question, Katie, is it? That I think none of us as teachers are given enough time for anything, so time management is always a challenge for any of this. But once, the positive though, once students are underway on a project, there's less for you to do. You're there to support them, to be a facilitator, and help them when they get stuck, and just try and, you know, check on them. I often expect them to maintain a log book, and I can check up on that to check the validity and authenticity of your work. But no, we're not really given time, outside time, to do it. When I ran it as a whole course, my students did that course 3 afternoons of a week. So these were year 11, 12 students who dropped a subject. So instead of doing 6 subjects in Queensland, they were doing 5. And we rearranged the timetable at the school because we had a lot of sports. So we had Kathy Freeman and Adam Scott and all these other famous people at the school doing their various sports. And I was running a digital technologies course. When we did that, my students were with me from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday afternoons. So that was a significant amount of time, 12 hours a week, for it to really work as making real projects and selling them, or being paid for them. But since then, for the last 14 years at the school at St. Peter's Lutheran College, I've just been doing this as part of our subjects, IDS and IPT, and so they fit within the curriculum. So I'd probably, it is a bit of a challenge setting them up, but once they're set up, it works pretty well. Any other questions? Did Cindy have a question? I can't see any hands up there. Are there any other questions from anyone? Because we're almost out of time. Can I just, while waiting to see if there's any more questions, just quickly, I won't have time to go through it, and you've sat and listened for long enough, but can I just suggest, if you haven't heard about this book, that you go and buy the book, The Second Machine Age, this here. It's just amazing. There's a lot of positives coming out of the combination of digitization and globalization, but there's a lot of scary negatives coming out of it. It's some serious concerns in terms of while there's an increase in economic bounty, the spread is not at all even, and we're going to see a world where a lot of people, a small amount of people earn an awful lot of money, and a lot of people earn little. And there's some serious social concerns with this move towards of digitization and globalization. So I strongly recommend it, but also I recommend it because we need to understand the world our students are entering into and how we need to change the way we teach to impact that. The fashion store Zara is a great example of the use of some of these concepts. So if you want to find out what they do and how they do it, that would be a good starting point. So if there are no other questions, we're pretty well out of time. I can, obviously, if people are interested, I can put some links up. You will be able to get a copy of this whole video, but I could certainly post some links to information if anyone's interested in it. So please let me know if there's anything that I need to add to this or that you feel is missing from this whole thing. Okay, so just to finish off then, I had a final slide there as a very, very brief sentence or summary. Real world, to some degree ill-defined, complex, opportunity to look at different perspectives, opportunity to collaborate, opportunity to reflect and evaluate, but really engaging for students has been my experience. So thank you for your time, and we might end it there if Ian is online somewhere. Ian? Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.